The goal
And
is
if
to
you're gonna
transform.
have transformation, it's not going to be because you sat up and just waited for suddenly. It's going to be because suddenly was bridged with subtly, and subtly was bridged with suddenly, over and over again. That means God gave me something, and I took care of it, and it built momentum for the suddenly. And then I took care of that, and it built momentum subtly. With no audience, with no microphone. The most important part of what I do is not when I get up here on Sunday. It's what I do in my prayer closet when you are not here, when my bonnet is on, when there are no eyelashes. This should be the easy part if I take care of what I'm supposed to do week in and week out. This should be the easy part. When you step into your suddenly moment, you won't be shocked. You won't feel like an imposter. You will know that you are right where you are supposed to be, because what I've been doing in quiet has qualified me for what I'm doing in public. What I've been doing in private and getting my thoughts together and getting my life together, it qualified me for the moment I stepped in. That would keep who I need to be in this moment. I am fully who I am supposed to be. I am fully who I have the capacity to be. And when God highlights something else that needs to grow and develop in me, I surrender to that, because what's more important to me than being known is being aligned. So the suddenly moments are bait to make you hungry for how you take care of what happened suddenly, subtly. I know this because in Acts 9, when Paul has an encounter on the road to Damascus, he experiences a conversion. A conversion is a Latin word that literally means turns towards. And because some of you guys, you've been in church, you've heard this a lot of times, you'll notice that I try to explain things because there's some people who don't have this knowledge. So I want you all to know, and then I have to say it like, I can't say it like academically because we don't have time for that, because I ran out of time talking, hooting and hollering with you all. So excuse this breakdown I'm about to give you about Acts 9. But Paul, they used to call him Saul. Saul was his thug name. You understand what I'm saying? He was the one and never the two. He didn't play when it came to Judaism, and he wasn't trying to hear about Jesus. He was chief thug. It was gang in, blood out. And he was upset because these Jesus talkers was out here messing with his clique. I said, forgive me. So Saul is out here waging war with whoever waging war with his clique. So he on the road to Damascus looking for somebody to fight. You know what I'm saying? Who wanted with a boss? You know what I'm saying? Like, who? Oh, everything's fine. And all of a sudden, while he was on his way, a light shone from heaven and a voice that only he could hear. And all of a sudden, when he was headed one way, the Spirit of God, Jesus himself, interrupts his path. And he says, you've been kicking up against the wrong system. I want you to turn in my direction. I want you to have a conversion and turn your direction. And in an instant, suddenly he's converted. But he doesn't leave it as suddenly. Galatians tells me in 1:17, this is a letter that Paul wrote. In Galatians 1:17, put it on the screen for me. He says, when I received this touch, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. He said, I didn't go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me. He says, but I went to Arabia and returned again to Damascus. Why does it say that he went to Arabia? It says that he spent 3 years in Arabia with no one looking and no apostles to I won't say contaminate, but no apostles to speak into what God did in his life, because he was trying to nurture what took place on the road to Damascus. I got to take care of this in a way that no one else could fully understand, in a way that no one else could fully speak to, because I don't just want to be converted, I want to be transformed. I'm about to bring it home. Conversion is when you turn towards, but transformation is when you take on a new form. And I'm not one of those people who like to talk bad about church, because the church has saved my life. And she is flawed, and she got a lot of issues. But she's been good to me in some seasons where I couldn't be good to myself. So I preface that by saying that there are moments when we have people who have been converted, but not transformed. Which means they have turned to God, but they have not been transformed by God. Oh. Help me say it real good. Because they don't nurture what took place. Or as Jesus would say, that they weren't born again. I can turn towards God, but if I don't do the work to be born again, then the Bible, Jesus literally says you cannot see the kingdom of heaven unless you do this work of being born again. And in order to do the work of being born again, you have to submit to a process. Okay. In order to be born again, let's think about birth. That there's a suddenly moment when the baby is born. But what happens suddenly is actually subtle momentum built over a series of weeks. Because Jesus used that analogy, I want to use it with you. If you are going to be born again, there is subtle transformation that must take place in your walk. He says, if you're going to enter the kingdom of heaven, it's not just enough to be converted. You can believe in God, but if you're going to be transformed, if you're going to be a part of the kingdom of heaven, you have to be transformed. If you're going to be transformed, you have to surrender to a process. And in surrendering to a process, you have to know that I want to change the way you show up. I want to change the way you speak. I want to change the way you think. Perception is experienced through senses. I'm about to land the plane, I promise. Perception is experienced through senses. So when we talk about being born again, we have to realize that God is changing my perception. He's changing my heart. He's changing my mind. He's changing my perception. So when Jesus blinds Paul on the road to Damascus, it is not coincidental, because he wants to change the way he sees. Because I want to change your perception. I don't just want to convert you, because if he just wanted to convert him, he could have had the moment and moved on to somebody else. But he has a strategic assignment in God's kingdom, and he cannot do this assignment and stay in the same shape that he was in. So he needs to be transformed. So he goes blind. I want to talk to you a little bit about having the perception of Jesus. Our senses is how we see, it's how we hear, it's how we smell, it's how we touch and taste. Those are our senses. So Jesus, we know, wants to change the way that Paul perceives. Last week, in the last couple of weeks, PT has been talking about seeing. God told me that my assignment is to help you understand that it's not just seeing. That is, it is a full transformation of all of your senses. I want to change the way you see for sure, says God. But I also want to change what you touch. Jesus touched lepers. That was disorienting for traditional Jews, because their perception of lepers were that they were untouchable. But what Jesus has come to do is to upset the system. And if he's going to upset the system, oh God, help me, he's got to make sure that it is perceived properly who he's come to touch. Oh, God, help me to say it real good. And he's got disciples watching. So he needs the disciples to understand that if you follow in my footsteps, there will be things that other people are not willing to touch, that I have anointed you to heal. And if you are unwilling to touch them, then they cannot be healed. So if you're going to take on the attributes of God, you can't just see the way that I see. You got to touch the way that I touch. You got to make sure that you got clean hands. Jesus wasn't just touching them to touch them. So God, make my hands clean so that when I'm raising these babies, I can impart healing in their souls. I raise them in a broken home, but they won't have a broken soul, because God's going to change the way I touch. As I'm writing this book and building these businesses, God help me to change the way I touch. He's going to change the way you touch. He touches the lepers. Everyone else saw Zacchaeus and they saw a traitor. He calls him a son of Abraham because he sees differently than most people see. When the woman was caught in the act of adultery, they said they caught her in the very act. But he heard something that they couldn't hear. He heard the shame that she would experience by being caught in the very act. See, when the Lord changes our perception, where someone else may hear a troubled kid, we hear a cry for help. When the Lord changes our perception, some hear a headline and get afraid, while others hear a headline and decide to start praying because I hear things the way God hears them. God, help me to hear the way that you can hear, that I won't just hear a blind man begging on the side of the road. I'll see a demand for my anointing. Foolish of you to think that we're looking at headlines to be lulled into terror and lulled into fear. You ought to hear something on the news that makes you, the God in me has got to stand up because I heard something. God, help me to hear my partner the way that you hear them. God, help me to hear my children the way that you hear them. I don't want to hear through the lens of my trauma. I don't want to hear through the lens of my expectations. I don't want to hear through the lens of my fear. So much of what we experience in relationships is a result of us hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, and smelling with our own senses, and not being born again in such a way that we are exchanging our senses for his. Jesus touches in a way that people didn't touch. He sees in a way that people didn't see. That woman at the well, she asked for a cup of living. He asked her for a taste of water. He wasn't interested in water. He had a taste for deliverance. His taste was different. And what he wants to do with Paul is to radically change his senses. And that's what he wants to do with us. I'm going to show you in Hebrews 5, 13 through 14. I'm getting to the text. I'm going to get out of here, I promise. Hebrews 5, 13 through 14 says, "For everyone who partakes only of milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. But solid food belongs to those who are of full age." How do we know who's of full age? Full age is those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and bad. When we exercise our senses, we can discern both good and bad. You want discernment? Look at your senses. Interrogate them. Am I seeing this right? Am I hearing this right? Or is my brokenness and my ambition blinding me from what this moment is? Paul has a fully embodied faith. This is what I am asking you to make your pursuit as a believer, to have a fully embodied faith that Jesus' senses would become your sense. And we see this happen with Paul. We see his sight change. We see his hearing change. He heard Stephen preaching and martyred him. But then he heard the Macedonians calling for his anointing after his conversion. We saw his touch change. He went from dragging people out of their homes to dragging devils out of people's body. We saw his touch change. And when we find him in the text, Paul has been transformed. He hasn't just been converted. He's been radically transformed. Listen, the reason why we can't just be converted and why we must seek transformation is because when you are transformed, you can't help but be who you are no matter what happens. If we just stop at conversion, we could turn back or away as easily as we turned to God. Oh. And this is why sometimes we have a revolving door relationship with God. Because we think he's going to do something. He doesn't do what we think he's going to do, so we leave. But so our relationship with God is more like a genie, where we think that he's supposed to do for us, instead of recognizing that his desire is truly to transform us. But Paul experiences the full transformation of God. And why is this important? Because his transformation must exist within a context where he will be beaten, imprisoned. God, help me say it real good. His identity is requiring him to walk into certain environments that will not honor who he is. Help me to say it real good, Lord. What God is doing in his life is requiring him to walk into a room where it could be a hostile environment. Some of us are not called to destinies where people are going to welcome us with open arms. Some of us are called into rooms where they will try and scare us out of position. This may not be for everybody, but there are some people in this room who, when you say you want to break a generational curse that has kept your family in bondage for generations, that all hell is going to break out against you. And because you recognize that your identity must exist within a context in which other people will be threatened. That's it. Sometimes God calls us into identities where we will be a threat to former systems, to former norms. When God is asking you to do a new thing, it will be a threat to an old thing. And if you have just been converted, you will let the threats run you out of position. But when you have been transformed, you will see the threat for what it is. You will recognize that this threat is trying to come up against God. And because it's trying to come up against God, I know that I don't have to fight it on my own. So Paul let them beat him. Paul let them imprison him. But when he was in prison, he started praying because he recognized that all I have to do is call on a name that is greater than any other name. All I have to do is remember that I didn't get myself in this mess, so I don't have to get myself out of it. Paul could have fought his way out of chains, but when you know who's fighting for you, you don't have to fight yourself out of chains. He let them take their best shot, and just when they thought he was won, there was an earthquake. You better read Acts 16. They thought that they was going to have to let him out, but the ground began to shake and the prison doors were open, and all of a sudden everybody was wondering, oh, they must have ran away. But here Paul was sitting in an open prison so that they could see when they got back. I could have walked out of here, but I have decided that I'm not leaving this moment until God himself orders my next step. You shot your best shot, and look at me still here. I may be beaten, but I'm still here. You put chains on me, but my God broke them off of me. I wish you could talk to your past and let your past know what the enemy meant for evil, my God meant it for good. I'm not chained the way I used to be chained. I may be bruised, but I'm not broken. And he that began to work in me is just getting started.
Thanks for tuning in to Haitian Rude Gal World, where we talk about everything. I struggle daily to walk the straight and narrow road. Sarah Jakes Roberts' teaching gives me guidance, confirmation, and hope for my future. For more content like this, subscribe to Sarah Jakes Roberts. Also hit thumbs up on your way out.